And levels of consciousness are similar in that they're a sort of background orientation towards life that affects the way you see and the way you're able to respond to life. But they're not fleeting like moods. You don't have, they don't change multiple times a day. They're more stable, they're more ongoing. I mean, it's not that, in the way that David Hawkins talks about it, it's not like you can't change your level of consciousness, but all of us tend to have a certain center of gravity that we revolve around.
So say that again. You said that so well. So the levels of consciousness are, say it again, this background.
They're kind of a background orientation towards life, that's there before everything else happens.
Right.
And they affect the way you see things, the way you relate things together, and the way that you're able to respond to what happens.
Well, it's interesting, too, because for the people that listened to the show last week, when Steve Zaffron was speaking about that we take action totally in a correlate with the way the world occurs to us. Mm-hmm. So the way the world looks, which is these levels of consciousness, the way it shows up is the way we respond to it, the way that we take action.
Right.
So these affect us completely. The way we think, the way we see, what we see as possible, what we see as not possible, what we can do, what we can't do, what other people look like, what the world looks like. So it's a big deal.
Definitely, and that's one of the ways to think about levels of consciousness is that one of the ways to think about levels of consciousness is that it affects the options we have in response to life. Right. If you're at higher levels of consciousness, you have much freer and much broader. You have a much freer and much broader range of options to draw from. And as you drop lower levels of consciousness, the amount of options that you have to respond from tend to constrict and constrict and constrict. You're less and less responsible, able to respond to life. And that's why developing in terms of levels of consciousness is so critical.
But
for
there's
any
another
of us.
piece too that's brilliant. And then when we start talking about like what are the lowest level moving up, you can see how it's the most constricted at the bottom. Your option is whether or not to commit suicide, more or less. It gets very, very, very narrow to, the point of being enlightened. So your energy levels also, starting from the bottom to the most expanded possibility, you have more and more energy available as you go up as well.
Absolutely. Most definitely. So Dr. Hawkins has created a scale ranging from 1 to 1,000. That's the scale that he uses. And as you get closer and closer to 1,000, you're getting more open, more free, much less constricted, more enlightened, more illuminated consciousness constantly. And as you go down closer and closer to 1, you're getting more constricted, less options, more fear-based, more contracted, more protective. I mean, that would be the general movement up to down.